So going back to this model again, we're going to take a look at safety and better evidence programs and start with IMEDS. So, where's my definition here? Innovation in Medical Evidence Development and Surveillance, or IMEDS, is this title of this section. There's increased evidence, or there's increased interest in developing programs that utilize electronic healthcare data. Currently, FDA has the Sentinel Initiative and the Mini Sentinel Initiative, which you may be familiar with, where they're looking at post-market active surveillance. And actually, this initiated with the same legislation that created Reagan-Udall. There was also a mandate from Congress to create a proactive, I guess you'd say, evidence-based electronic healthcare database where we could start to look at the safety of products that are already on the market. So Sentinel has been looking since then at developing post-market active surveillance systems and has created a very large distributed database, 17 data partners, and I believe at this point they're at they have about 150 million electronic health records. And so the idea is that can we put together this very large database and then query the database and see safety signals that may be popping up that will give us a clue about something that is a safety problem before it becomes a lot of adverse events. The other initiative that's been parallel to this has been OMOP, the Observational Methods Outcomes Research, that's being run at the FNIH, Foundation for the NIH. It's another multi-year initiative to figure out research methods that are feasible and useful to analyze existing healthcare databases. And they're specifically trying to identify and evaluate safety and benefit issues of drugs already on the market. So they're looking at another aspect of it. So at this point, the feeling was we should pull these together and create a long-term research strategy. And so we're pulling together OMOP, parts of the methods, parts of Mini Sentinel, and creating something called IMEDS, or Innovation in Medical Evidence Development and Surveillance. IMEDS has three parts: methods research, fellowships, and evaluation. So in the methods part, again, we're going to build on what Mini Sentinel and OMOP have actually done and look at a variety of methodological research programs, and including some of the work that's being done by PCORI, or the Patient-Centered Outcomes Institute. So what we're trying to provide is bringing together coordination and support to assure that the methods research activities not only reflect the questions that are priorities for FDA, but also other stakeholders, including advocates, industry, other not-for-profits, data partners, academics, FDA, others, and other government agencies. So this is a large research undertaking. It's pulling together a number of initiatives that are already out there. And the other part of it is trying to create some sort of governance structure so that there will be input and governance actually from a variety of stakeholders. Right now, FDA runs Sentinel and FNIH runs OMOP, and so now we want to bring the learnings from all of those things together and create a long-term research strategy. So not only are we talking about a long-term research strategy, but also working on training and best practices, and I'll talk about those in a second. So the fellowships, as you pull together these large data sets, it's become apparent that there are not a lot of folks that are trained to actually do research on these data sets. In some ways, there are a lot of new technologies. And so what we need to do is create fellowships, a variety of different training mechanisms to allow people not only at the FDA, but in academia and industry to go through some training so that they are able to perform research in this area. So we're in the process of looking at that right now. We think we will start a pilot pretty soon that will be just having a few fellows, probably about 4 fellows that will rotate between OMOP and Sentinel. And again, same model. We'll start with something simple, create 4 fellowships for a year, see how that works. At the same time, in parallel, we would look at creating a much larger fellowship program that has more structure to it. The evaluation component, in some ways, I think, is trickier. So if you think about it, we were working on methods research. That's one component, training folks to be able to utilize this data in research. And then the third component is how do we actually now translate that into lessons learned and figure out how to create standards and best practices? How are we going to use this data? And so this evaluation component is basically trying to address that. And so we're trying to develop a national resource that leverages the lessons learned and resources created and create a number of initiatives. And so we are looking at a couple of potential pilots where we might try utilizing what we learn in the other parts of IMEDS and, again, another pilot to look at how does this work in real life. And where we are at this point is we're finalizing the scope of a transition plan, and we think the transition plan will take 7 or 8 months to pull these other research initiatives together, create the infrastructure, create the governance structure, so we want to do that in an orderly fashion and make sure we're utilizing the work that's already been done. And then, as I said, our process is that there'll be a sign-off from the Reagan-Udall board and the FDA from a concept standpoint and where our funding would come from, and then go out and secure funding and get the final sign-off.